Welcome back to MFO, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. Hey, a couple of days ago, I did a video regarding the 5 most controversial topics in the bass fishing world. And I got a comment from my buddy Tim Barthel, who saw the video and said, "Hey, Mark, I got another topic that you kind of missed. What about the controversial topic of knockoff baits in the fishing industry? You know, one bait company comes out with a bait and all of a sudden you got a ton of knockoffs, a ton of copies." He's absolutely right. That is a big controversial topic. In fact, it's one that I've got some experience with, not only from a standpoint of working through Core Tackle, but also working with a company that is doing some kind of copying of different baits. We're going to talk about that and both sides of that topic when we get back. Tim, thanks for bringing this up. This is a great topic. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to Mark Fisher Outdoors, everybody. I'm Mark Fisher. So one of the things I've thought of a couple right off the bat. This is the new Berkley Flux Gill. Well, that's the old Bellows Gill. Pretty similar, huh? Knockoffs. Then you've got what we saw in the thumbnail, the River to Sea Whopper Plopper and the Berkley Choppo. There's tons of them. And let's get into what is the debate about it. One company comes out with a product that is maybe unique and haven't seen before, and then another company comes and copies. Well, the issue is that let's use this as an example right off the bat. River to Sea comes out with the Whopper Plopper. Wow, an original bait, and then all of a sudden Berkley comes out with the Choppo and copies. Except wait a minute. Original bait? This wasn't an original bait. Larry Dalton they were throwing these for big baits, throwing them for muskies years and years ago, and then downsizing them to go for bass all of a sudden. So the idea of originality that's where did it really start? I mean, when you think of the ribbon tail worm, does that mean that one guy came up with a ribbon tail worm 1,000 years ago, and now every ribbon tail worm that comes after that is just a knockoff? Could be, and there's validity to that. The reality is that every football head jig is a knockoff of the first guy who said, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to make this jig head into kind of a football head shape so that it comes across the bottom better, doesn't get hung up." Every football head jig is knocking off that first time that one guy did that. I get it, but you can also look at it and go, every company in the world makes football head jigs at this point. So now let's turn it around, looking at it from a different perspective. Like I said, working with Core Tackle, I was there, I saw it, I was blown away by it when Matt and Johnny came up with the hover rig, which really was one of the first baits to take that situation where people were using a hook and a nail weight and said, "No, wait, instead of doing that, we're going to put it all on one bait." And you've got the hover rig. Well, guess what? Two months after the hover rig comes out, there's people knocking it off already. And from that standpoint, I can absolutely relate to the frustration of a bait company coming up with an original idea, putting it out there, and watching their market share go down because everybody starts to copy them because, hey, that's a good idea. You're selling pancakes, I'm going to sell pancakes over here, and we're going to take away, we're just going to saturate the market with the products that are very similar, and all of a sudden your great idea turns into just one of 100. That's definitely an issue. Now let's look at it from a different perspective, from the angler's perspective. And I don't care whether you look at it talking about a Cinco or if you're talking about a chatterbait. There have been a ton of stick baits that come out basically imitating the Cinco. Okay? We've done episodes comparing them. And the reality is that yes, you can make a product that's similar to it, but if your product has enough uniqueness that you patent and you prevent people from doing exactly the way that you do it, there's often imitators, but never duplicators. That's a saying that we've heard. And so the reality is, I know for me, I don't purchase stick baits. I purchase Cincos because I believe that Cinco actually works better than many other baits. Now I'll give you an example though. Even though I use Cincos in Florida, I'll also use a Gambler in Florida because typically that water's shallower and a Gambler sinks a little slower than a Cinco does. And because of that, I may want that buoyancy that a Gambler has that a Cinco doesn't. So as those imitators come along, as those knockoffs come along, there might actually be benefits to them that they work in certain situations where the original one didn't quite work as well. You go back to the chatterbait, to be honest, there's a lot of vibrating jigs, but most guys, when they talk about throwing a vibrating jig, they're throwing a jackhammer. They're not even throwing a chatterbait. They're throwing a specific jackhammer chatterbait because that is the bait that actually gets the job done 90% of the time. Yes, some of those other baits will work at times and will catch a fish here or there, but they won't catch the quantity or be as totally right on as the jackhammer chatterbait, for example. So when you're talking about knockoffs, are they really as good? Even if they're cheaper, are they really as good? And that becomes the issue for anglers. Hey, if I can buy a Megabass Vision 110 for $25, but I can get one for $12, is that bait going to be as good as the $25 bait? If it is, awesome, we're saving a ton of money. But if it isn't quite as good, then are you really getting your money's worth? If you're catching half the fish, that you're getting what you're paying for is really what it is. So I'm curious as to your thoughts on this. It's definitely a controversial topic. I've seen it from both sides, like I said, and the reality is they talk about imitation being the most sincerest form of flattery. Well, my guess is from a bait company's perspective, they do not like that kind of flattery. They want to keep that market share to themselves. Guys, I appreciate you tuning in, and please send me your comments. Hit the like button if you liked the content that we're putting out, and if you haven't, subscribe to the channel for sure. We want you to become part of the Mark Fisher Outdoors community. Thanks again for watching. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Take care, everybody.